Hello and welcome again to the Writer Review. This is Eric Writer, and this week we're going to be taking a look back at the 2019 psychological drama titled The Intruder. Now, The Intruder runs for 1 hour and 42 minutes long. It is directed by Deon Taylor. The script was done by David Loffrey. The producers were Deon Taylor, Roxanne Avent, Mark Berg, Brad Kaplan, and Jonathan Schwartz. The movie was composed by Jeff Zanelli, the cinematography by Daniel Pearl, and it was edited by Melissa Kent. And the stars of the movie are Michael Ealy, Meagan Good, Dennis Quaid, Joseph Sikora, Alvina August, Lee Shorten, Erica Cerra, Kurt Evans, Caroline Anderson, Lili Sepe, Reylene Harewood, Chris Shields, Sam Vincent, Caroline Muthoni Muita, and Connor Mackey. The Intruder is definitely a thriller that defies the rules of anything that is deemed logical. This is a movie that truly made my blood boil. I know I probably have spouted off in the past. And yes, I will admit, I have anger issues, and I have an extremely short fuse, and I could sometimes go unhinged if I have to. And in this movie, I went unhinged. I practically almost screamed at the protagonist when I really shouldn't. I was actually kind of rooting for the bad guy when I really shouldn't. But I didn't really have much of a choice now, did I? While it was rated PG-13, and it was supposed to, which kind of more or less was supposed to cater to a wider audience, veteran screenwriter David Loffrey takes little care about human common sense when dealing with situations that are absolutely intended for audiences to sit back and scream in terror and in fear. But did I get any terror or fear? No. I got another emotion. Probably one of the easiest emotions anybody can get. And from the tone of my voice, you can clearly guess. Anger. That's right. Vexed. Frustrated. And downright irritable. Why is that? Because the characters, especially the protagonists, are some of the dumbest people I have ever known.
You didn't say anything.
Even though it shows no apologies in making this movie dumb in its intentions, which I fully understand because it's a psychological thriller, and it's really not necessarily made for us to be super, it's not maybe catered towards the super intelligence. In fact, the plot is pretty simplistic. But just because you made a movie that is simplistic in its style and its plot doesn't give David Loffrey or director Deon Taylor the right to insult our intelligence. And I, for one, do not want my intelligence insulted.
Hey.
The choices made by the characters in this movie are so irresponsible and illogical, there were times when they deserved whatever fate was given to them. I know this sounds insensitive to me, but if these two characters died, I really couldn't give a fuck. Because they just keep making one constant stupid decision after another. And they just don't seem to get the clue. There's a guy who sold him a house, and he just won't go away. What does that tell you? Where's your common sense? Is it just sort of just a plot to keep the narrative going? In the real world, if you see somebody who's still intruding on your property when he really shouldn't, here's the thing, here's a solution. Pick up a phone, call 911, and get the cops over here. Oh, I know. Since our two leading protagonists happen to be African American, and we all know the whole narrative of African Americans and cops is the synonymous equivalency to oil and fire. I guess that's out of the picture. Or if you don't want to deal with the cops, I say, I still think firearms and guns are still legal in the United States. Just take matters in your own hands. Pick up a gun and shoot the fucker if he's bothering you so much. But no, our protagonist is a pussy, and he doesn't want to pick up a fucking gun. Okay, I don't condone murder. I don't condone violence of any sorts. I know I'm kind of almost sounding a bit like a sadist, but a lot of solutions could have been just solved with one simple solution. Either you call the cops, or you shoot the bastard. But they don't even do that. In fact, more times than often, they actually keep inviting him in. Wasn't he supposed to go off to Florida to go with his family after his wife died? But no, he's still hanging around, mowing the lawns, sorting out the Christmas decorations, and just being a stalker and a creep. Sure, in the beginning, it had an interesting build up to this guy. When you first introduce him, he seems to come across as a pretty nice guy. Sells them the house. But wait a minute, if he's so obsessed with the house and he sold it to them, why did he do it in the first place? This movie is stupid. Okay, psychological thrillers are a pretty old genre. Of course, I liked some of the old psychological dramas, the ones that Alfred Hitchcock had done. Yeah, he had his share of hits and misses, which I perfectly understand. But even some of Hitchcock's worst films is nothing compared to this abomination. That's not only degrading, but insulting. And the worst part is, David Loftree, who has written many, many scripts in the past, some of them were actually pretty good. So, what went wrong? I mean, he wrote scripts like Obsessed, Penthouse North, and Lakeview Terrace, which I actually admit that one was pretty good. But he never tries to improve his formula. Meanwhile, director Deon Taylor makes the vibe and the energy very bland. Yeah, there's a lot of boring scenes in this movie that kind of seem to somewhat feel almost like a soap opera melodrama. I mean, if they're not talking, if the focus is not on this deranged homeowner from hell we have to also have to ingest some of this boring, banal soap opera elements about this young couple and their failed relationships. Their failed relationship. Like, I really couldn't care less. I was sitting in my chair a lot of times just counting the minutes gone by. And if I'm seen doing that, then this movie must be pretty bad. So our two leading protagonists are Scott and Annie, played by Michael Ealy and Meagan Good. They seem to be getting by pretty well financially. Maybe not relationship-wise, since we really don't know too much about the reason why their marriage is somewhat falling apart, even though they still kind of choose to stay together. Anyhow, Scott is now making more money. He's, I think he's an advertising exec or something like that. So, he's getting this big promotions, and now he's a big hot shot advertising exec. He's going to get a promotion. And now this married couple is going to have to leave the big city of San Francisco and settle in the more quaint and serene Napa Valley so that they could raise a family and live in peace and harmony. But when they get there, they are greeted by the former homeowner, who goes by the name of Charlie Peck, played by Dennis Quaid, who says that he's relocating with his estranged adult offspring who migrated to Florida, and the young couple purchased the house and hope that their location will be a joyous one. I mean, it's a very quaint, quiet little area. Oh, by the way, it's not really was filmed in location in Napa Valley. It was actually filmed, I think, somewhere in some small secluded area in British Columbia. I guess when you can't make money in the United States, where's the cheaper place to make a movie? Canada. Yes, that's right. Maple syrup and pudding, eh? Okay, enough of that. I just thought I'd throw in a little humor to go with my anger. Oh boy, do I have a lot to say. Even though I probably said a lot already. Yeah. I mean, it's filled with a nice front lawn. It's got a nice little forestry background. It's got animals hanging around. It's got deer. And then in the early scenes when the couple saw the deer, they're like, oh, how cute. And then bang. Oh, fuck. That deer's dead. I wonder what did. Oh, hi, Charlie. Yeah, you could tell right away that this movie definitely has a big liberal agenda going for them. After all, our antagonist is an old white guy who wears a MAGA hat. Our two leading protagonists are African American who don't believe in carrying guns and also don't believe in the cops. Defund the police. All right, enough of the race politics here. But you could clearly tell that they're not hiding it. They're not keeping it concealed. It's definitely got more of a liberal bias. Anyhow, however, things take a strange turn when they discover that Charlie, who was supposed to be on his way to Florida, was supposed to be going east. Well, it seems like he's just hanging around the area. And he seems to show up whenever he pleases. And that's kind of creepy. I mean, he keeps making up all these excuses as to why he hasn't left already. But the worst part is that Annie, who is super nice, but she's also super naive, and as much as I hate to say this, she also comes across as being super stupid too, because she keeps letting him in. I mean, just like, oh, you poor dear, you, come on in. Come on, Annie, he's taking advantage over you. But she keeps bringing him in. That's the worst part. If somebody was hanging around our area all the time, we would have the cops over here, and he would get a fucking restraining order not to come near our property. You could have just done that. Oh, no. Blacks, cops, oil, fire. You do the math, folks. So, he's doing things like mowing the lawn, walks into their home uninvited, sits down to eat Thanksgiving dinner. Where's that trip to Florida you were pointing out? He's also comes around during Christmas time. Florida, remember that? Why is he still here? He sold the house to them. Of course, he also mentions things about does he have any, oh yeah, he has a family, like I said, he's got adult kids who are living in Florida. But, where's his wife? Oh yeah, of course he mentioned that, his wife's dead. Okay, are we supposed to take pity and sympathy for him? Probably not. But, because he's the villain in the story, even though he says that his wife either, I don't know if she died of an illness or if she had committed suicide, he comes up with something like in that area. Of course, he's not going to say, oh, I murdered her. No. Oops, I think I gave away a spoiler there. But, while his wife is still very inviting for Charlie and seems to cater and nurture him, but realizes that he's taking advantage of her, and he's practically almost pulling the carpet from under Scott. Now, Scott might probably be a little more of the logical of the two, but that's still not saying much, because he's just as naive as Annie, because they simply won't call the cops or even, induce intimidation or even just simply kill on account of self-defense. Just say, oh, I did it out of self-defense. I didn't do it out of spite. Or that I didn't do it out of pleasure. But still, Now, I've watched a lot of these kind of psychological thrillers, and many of them were not really always that good. Some were, they had its share of hits and misses. And like I said, I've seen The Hand That Rocks the Cradle, which was pretty formulaic at times, but at least there was some level of intrigue there. Of course, nothing could beat Stephen King's Misery. By God, Kathy Bates as Annie Wilkes. Pure classic. Mwah! Unlawful Entry was pretty good. I mean, Ray Liotta, he's one scary bastard. There were a few of them. I didn't like Sleeping with the Enemy that much, because that movie was meh. When I think of meh movies, I think either 5 or 6 out of 10. They should have done more development with Patrick Bergin's role, but they But still, even Julia Roberts' performance was meh. But, like I said, the psychological thriller dramas usually are, at times hit or miss. But this one, The Intruder, is a miss. A big, bold letter miss. Apparently, Scott finds Charlie's constant presence annoying and feels uncomfortable with him hanging around all the time. Meanwhile, Annie, of course, shows a more hospitable side towards Charlie and takes pity on this poor soul, assuming that he's welcome to visit any time. Uh, uh, Florida, remember that? Okay. What they don't know is that under that pleasant smile, Charlie's intentions are quite evil. Oh, duh! Did we figure that out yet? Lawfrey has kind of built a reputation of making B movies. Now, when I think of B movies, I'm not a snob. Some B movies are actually surprisingly pretty good. Taylor himself has already directed an obsessive stalker thriller a year ago with a movie called Traffic. Not like the 2004 movie Traffic, no, but spelt Traffik. I guess so that's not to be confused with the Oscar nominated movie Traffic. Together, the duo of Lawfrey and Taylor is just milking in repetitive content complete with left wing agenda stereotypes. Like I said, it's like, it has this whole orange man bad thing. Republicans are evil, Democrats are saints. There is no in the middle. Even though sometimes I also find libertarians are just as wackadoodle. And who am I to judge about being a wackadoodle? Because I'm a big bona fide weirdo. And I have no apologies or denials about it, too. They definitely show no kind of subtlety, that's just the worst thing, in which direction it's going. As Scott and Annie are new homeowners, hoping to, raise a family, but just can't quite settle because the original owner just doesn't want to let go. But then we come to also the realization that Scott actually does try to call a member of Charlie's family to get some information as to why this asinine is not leaving. So he calls their daughter. Their daughter is pretty distant and somewhat almost reluctant to even give any information. She tells him that Charlie is obsessed with the house, which is the reason why he's not going to go away.
Okay.
After all,
Can't wait till I have to have air.
After all,
Can I have some air?
I'm gonna go as fast as I can. Okay, I'll do the best I can. And then she tells him that Charlie is the owner of the house and that this is the house that he was brought up and raised in, and he is obsessed with the house. And anybody who gets in the way of the house is going to meet their fate. And then she tells Scott to never call ever again. Okay. This is the type of story that has been done to death, including Cold Creek Manor, which ironically starred Dennis Quaid and was in that movie, only this time he was playing the protagonist in there. But anyhow, and this film doesn't offer anything different. Even the bizarre behavior from Charlie and the scatterings of violent scenes still feel formulaic and anticlimactic at best. It's unfortunate that the intruder seems to fail at reaching the goal of being referred to as a guilty pleasure, even when we become witness to the slow decline in the mental health of Charlie. Scott, the overwhelmed busybody, easily picked up on Charlie's eccentric characteristics when he was observing the estate of their newly purchased abode. Meanwhile, Annie, who seems to come off as a gullible individual with a great dedication as a writer of various magazines focusing on women's issues. Sadly, we never see them at work unless home employed, and doesn't come off as the strong, empowered individual we would have expected from movies these days, where strong black women are greatly needed in the quest to move forward. See, this is what disappointed me about this movie. So in the end, Annie is just a vulnerable damsel in distress. We can see Charlie as the macabre nutcase from a mile away due to the lack of nuance depicted in his character, through Lafferty's abysmal script. There's not one moment where there's anything outside the obvious. Charlie has an obsession with Annie because it's right there in front of us from the minute we're introduced to Charlie. His frequent visits are still trespassing, and that's still a violation, and it should be a sign that Scott needs to call the cops on him. But he reluctantly doesn't. Meanwhile, Annie dismisses any claims that Charlie is a creep and just invites him to their home anytime. Maybe his name shouldn't be called Charlie Peck, but Freddie Freeloader. Quaid has reached a career low, being way over the top, even going into almost full Joker mode, when really his motives call for him to be more cold and calculating instead of over the top and sneering. Yeah. The other thing that makes The Intruder so jarring is that there are other issues and conflicts that relate to the couple outside of Charlie that never get resolved and are only mentioned once or twice. There's little depth of Scott's friendship with Mike, played by Joseph Sikora, who was just on for comic relief and then is just killed off like we really couldn't care less. Or even the not-so-insecure relationship between Scott and Annie. It's just pretty much a soap opera scenario. We know that Scott can be fresh with other women, even in front of her. And that also seems to be a myriad of poor character development, like the coffee shop neighbor who knows all there is about Charlie's past, and so much more. The final act is not very suspenseful, as Taylor utilizes several tropes we've seen in suspense films hundreds of times before. The only time revelations are solved is in the end, from Scott's refusal to carry guns to further information regarding Charlie's family to where Charlie's been staying the whole time, even though it seems like we find out that he's staying in the bottom of a basement in a hidden area of the house. So he's been there the whole time. So in the end, this movie is just a hack effort from Taylor and Lafferty, who refused to change their direction in their film career. And I gotta say, this movie was a complete and total abomination. And if I was to give this movie a scale out of 10, I would have to give The Intruder a 3 out of 10. So I guess this ends my writer review. Thank you all for listening in. If you wish to subscribe to my YouTube channel, please feel free to do so. If you wish to leave a comment, go right ahead. But just remember the 3 simple rules: be kind, be courteous, and please refrain from any rude comments. And I will be back again with another movie review. So until next time, this is Eric Writer saying, keep watching those movies, and I'll see you around. Goodbye.